Very good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on the time zone you are in. I welcome you to this webinar on Study Abroad, What Not to Do, hosted by Sir Syed Global Scholar Award. We have three speakers today who would be sharing their thoughts. First is Dr. Mohsin Khan. Uh, Mohsin Bhai did his BSc and MSc from AMU, and then did his PhD from University of Baltimore. And his project work also involved a brief stint at the National Institute of Health. He is also the ex-chairman of SSGSA, and in fact, he was the first scholar to become the SSGSA chair. The next speaker is Dr. Bilal Ahmed Mir. He also did his BSc and MSc from AMU, and then PhD from Deakin University, and currently he is a postdoc at Leibniz Institute for Farm Animal Biology. And next we have Mr. Qambar Hasan Rizvi. He did his BSc and MSc from AMU, then MPhil from Jamia Millia Islamia, and then PhD, and currently he is a PhD candidate in Deakin University. Thank you so much, Mohsin Bhai, Bilal Bhai, and Qambar Bhai for agreeing to do this event. And I welcome all our scholars and other guests into the meeting. And so with this, I would like to hand over the proceedings to Mohsin Bhai to start the event.
Thank you so much, Salman, for organizing this webinar, and thank you all the participants. Like, we are happy to have other speakers as well, as Salman already introduced. Welcome Qambar, Bilal, and Zubair. So we'll start, given we already have almost 10 minutes into the meeting. So today's discussion will be around study abroad, what not to do. So specifically, you may have heard a lot from your mentors and through research online, like the things you're supposed to do when you are applying for graduate programs. And today's discussion would be around, like, things you should not do, and things that may impact your chances of getting into the graduate programs, or you're building your relationship with your potential advisors and things of that nature. So the structure of the discussion would be like, there are two slides which we will provide you a high-level overview, and in third slides there are three topics we have chosen. These topics will cover graduate studies, scholarships, and things of related to these topics. And then we'll have open question and answer, depending on, like, if you have any questions specific to the graduate studies, scholarships, applications, we'll go over that. So Salman, next slides, please.
I'll just like to add, so you don't have to wait for the talk to finish to put your questions. You can always put your questions in the chat box, and I'll read it out in the end.
Thank you, Salman. Okay, so as you have seen here, this slide provides a high-level overview, like what are the things successful applicants do. And just looking at the slides, you will realize that it is segmented, meaning by, like, specific steps and things you're supposed to do are segmented into three parts. So the first part is planning carefully. So you're supposed to plan, like, when you will be writing your exams, which semester or the year you plan on joining a graduate study, and this will impact, like, everything else. So the main step I would suggest is to starting early. You plan early, maybe when you have at least, like, then your first year of undergraduate program, now into the second year, and you start working and building your resume. So build your profile, such as, like, working on your GPA, because GPA is an important attribute that graduate programs look at. Even some scholarship programs have, like, a certain limit in terms of a threshold that you're supposed to reach. Then, of course, hands-on research experience, such as, like, projects you may have done, internships, and as well as, if possible, publish or present in different national or international conferences. When you're planning these things, it is really, really important don't wait until the last semester of your terminal degree. And if you do so, then you may lose like, at least 1 year or more, because applying to any graduate program overseas, you have to put at least 1 year in advance. It's really important that you are really organized, and then have a plan and time frame for graduate studies, right? So what we mean by time frame, meaning like, let's say you started thinking this year that you would like to do graduate studies in 2021. So, by December, you're supposed to get all your application packages in place and send them away. Then the second step is preparing. Once you have your plan, you know which time frame you're looking at, work really hard to get decent scores in GRE and TOEFL. And this is something, as I said earlier, you should start 1 year in advance, so you have enough time to prepare really well, to do really well. Many graduate programs have a certain requirement in terms of GRE as well as TOEFL, like how much score at minimum they require. The second part is selecting universities. And when you're selecting the universities, it's really important to do broad searches. So if you have attended some of our earlier webinars, we talk about selecting universities, let's say 5 top-notch universities, 5 mid-tier universities, and 5 backup universities. And then, out of these 15, you apply to about, 10 or somewhere around that number. And this depends upon multiple factors. First, how good you have done in GRE and TOEFL, and also the kind of GPA you have, the research interest you may have, things of that nature. And then network and communicate. When we say network and communicate, it actually encompasses networking with your potential mentors, networking with your potential advisors, universities, reaching them out, but asking them intelligent questions. And how you can ask an intelligent question when you have done your homework, meaning you have already researched a lot online, the common questions that you can just look at the internet and know rather than asking them. And one of them could be let's say you're reaching out to a graduate program and asking them, what is the minimum GRE or TOEFL score they require? This is something all graduate programs will have on their website. So you could just look at it and know. Draft application package. This requires really nice statement of purpose, really nice resume, and other questions that a graduate program may ask you. So what you will see, many graduate programs just ask a statement of purpose, but there are some programs, in addition to your statement, they have additional questions, and these questions are drafted in a way that they can figure out how motivated you are to do graduate school, or your research interest, or how well you write when you have been asked a question that is beyond your statement. So you're supposed to pay really, so you're supposed to invest some time in drafting your application package. And again, revise, refine, and finalize. What that means is, once you have these things in good place, work with your mentor. They will, provide you with some feedback. You revise it again, and you do a few iterations, until it is in really great shape. What you should not do over the time, mentoring hundreds of students, what we have realized, a lot of applicants wait till last date, and this is really bad in many aspects. One, let's say if you're just waiting for last date and submitting your application, something happened. For example, you don't have internet access, or you are unable to connect with SSGSA teams such as to pay your application fee, or you are not able to submit all application material, upload them in time, and your scores and transcript may not reach on time. So plan to do it early. Don't wait for last date of application, because many of the graduate programs, what they do is they select students in cycles, and if you are in early cycles, it is possible you could get early decision, and that will be really nice, because you already made it to the cutoff. Not doing your research. So what this what we mean by this is not all programs are same. Each program is different in some sense from others. So making sure you spend time to really understand each graduate program and then find your application according to it. You cannot just copy paste your SOPs and resume from one application to another without like doing real nice fine tune. Otherwise, it may not be as impactful. And then the other point is overdoing attempts to impress. So what we have seen is, and this is really bad, it is good to reach out to people to connect with them, but a lot of like folks from, you know, Asian continent, what they do is they try to impress by like, you know, flattery or writing email with a language that you don't speak, right? So, and these kind of things that actually one can recognize once they read the email, or they say, oh, this student is just trying to do some flattery. So try to avoid that, like keep it very professional, you know, keep it around the research interest you have, tied with some of the publication or the research the investigator or the potential, you know, advisor may have done. So keep it really, really professional, really nice. Copy pasting. So one of the things we have seen over the time, like students actually copy paste things from one application to another without like paying much attention. And when you do this, what happens is chances are you will make a lot of mistakes, such as like, you know, copy pasting things that's supposed to be for a particular program into another program, which is slightly different, or so please don't make those mistakes. Not following the application instructions. This is actually no brainer. What we have seen over the time, like when there are a lot of applicants like applying, including for our SSGSA applications, scholarship programs, a lot of them don't pay attention to what the question is, and this is really bad. Make sure like you spend some time reading questions carefully and maybe few times, so you understand them really, really well, and then you fine tune and draft your application package around it. The next is the picking the wrong recommenders. So what we mean by wrong recommenders, so when you apply to any graduate programs, roughly you have to provide about 3 letters of support from the folks you may have worked with, and generally these are the professors, you know, with whom you may have interacted, did project or research or internships. Make sure you choose the people who are responsive, people who will be able to provide all the letters in time, who are actually a little bit tech savvy, or if not, you can help them with it so they submit things, you know, properly. We had a case where a recommender from AMU, actually he submitted a letter of support for one of the application, and they actually didn't mark the criteria that graduate school has. I think there were 5 things on which, like, scale 1 to 5, the recommender has to rate a particular student, and they have chosen like score 2 or 1, and which is really, really low. And you know, the graduate school actually flagged that application, although the recommender says really nice things about in the text, but the scale they have given didn't reflect that. So we have to actually help the applicant get another letter and justify with the graduate school. Nonetheless, the applicant was admitted, but try to find people who really understand the process. If they don't understand the process, maybe you can walk them through. The third step is, like, if you do it really, really well, work with your mentors, you know, hopefully you may get early decisions, multiple offers, scholarship supports, things of that nature. But all of this requires like quite a bit of planning and working really, really hard. The things you're not supposed to do. So we have seen with some mentors, they do work with their with some scholars, they work with their mentors really well in the beginning, and once they are done with their application, they are not in loop, or maybe not updating their mentors. This is sometimes may not be, you know, beneficial for the applicants, because you still have a lot of things to work with your mentors, right? Such as like determining which program to join if you have multiple offers. And given your mentors may have experience over the time, given they have mentored a lot of students, they have gone through the same process, they will be your there will be people who can advise you wisely, like what are the things you're supposed to do. What we have seen, like sometimes the folks who may get multiple offers, they will commit with multiple professors, and this is something you supposed to avoid. And this is where it is better to choose a program early on and commit with it. And then if other programs you have received offers, maybe ask them more time. Don't commit multiple places or with professors, because what happen is you may be in a particular research area, right? And people actually talk to each other. You may know, some of those other folks may be potential collaborators with your lab, or may work with your professor, or no, or maybe they are colleague with these people from scientific realm. They know each other really well. So try to avoid that. And the other mistake people make is joining a program without doing follow-up searches. So what we mean by that, so you may have already done some research about the program when you were applying, right? But once you get the offer, you are about to join the program. Let's say you have multiple offers from multiple places. It's really important that you again invest some time, not only searching the programs and the professors with whom you may work, but also about the school, the vicinity, where the city is, what kind of job aspects you may have, or things of that nature, like doing some more follow-up research, which will shape your future career in a trajectory. So this is some of the things we wanted to provide a high-level overview to you guys. So in the next slide, what you will see is Qambar will provide you an overview of common myths and things that people think and they may not be correct, and things you're supposed to do. So I request Qambar to actually go over this slide, and in the next third slide we will have 3 discussion items, and this will be open discussion among the panelists, and afterwards we will have question answer. Thank you, Qambar.
Thank you. Thank you, Mohsin bhai. Thank you, Salman and everyone. Good evening from my side. And yeah, just before starting that, like I would like to say that me and Bilal probably would be better that we could present this whole scenario like together. Bilal, are you okay with that? Is Bilal disconnected or something happened?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So yeah, because they're like, we got a bunch of experience, and like we can share those things with you guys. So yeah, Mohsin bhai presentation was really nice. He discussed everything, key points, step by steps, and that's what you guys need, like those kind of things. And that's why we need seniors like Mohsin bhai pushing us all the time. And then yeah, so you guys will help him through his mentorship, and then he was our mentor at our time as well. So most important thing, so me and Bilal will be presenting this whole thing and discussing this in detail. So because this presentation is all about what not to do and scholarship application, irrespective of what country you are aiming it, irrespective of wherever you are applying for. So I found the most important thing, which I think most of us who got scholarships and in being into foreign countries, that disappointment, that's the very most common thing I found with the students. They disappoint very early. I got disappointed all the time. I think Bilal can talk about that. So most important thing I would say is that don't get disappointed. It takes sometimes too much time, and I remember those phrases from Allama Iqbal and those things, now meedi kufr hai. That's important. Yeah, because the thing is, when you start losing your patience, at the same time I think you will get that thing. That's what my experience is. So scholarship application gonna take time. Sometimes it takes years. Not if you are lucky, you would probably get within few months if you got good mentors. Even if you got good mentors, sometimes the application, and nowadays because of the COVID, the whole scenario is changed. So please keep patience. It is a scenario for everyone, especially foreign scholar. Even though people are getting scholarship, we're getting so many messages on different, like they are not getting response for the visa. So there are complications that's gonna happen. So most important thing, I would say that disappointment is gonna be a key. That please don't get disappointed very early. It is going to take time. And Bilal, you want to add something? Yeah.
Yeah, I think good afternoon to everyone from my side. Thank you, the organizer, for the introduction. I would like to add that I did not complete bachelor's and master's from Aligarh Muslim University. I did bachelor's in biosciences and master's in biochemistry from Jamia Millia Islamia, daughter institute of AMU. It's still same, right? So I think, yeah, Qambar is right. It sometimes takes time. And as he said that looking at the current scenario, you should actually look at places where there is recruiting happening. For example, you look at Europe, visas are being issued and positions are being advertised. So this is the best time actually to apply for any master's and PhD position in Europe. In Australia and in USA, immigration has been closed for some time, maybe until mid of next year. The situation will remain same. So that also you have to actually keep in mind. You have to actually look for the places that are recruiting. So I think Qambar can actually continue. So
Yeah.
I think when you're looking for graduate schools, everywhere in the world, they provide scholarships. No place is without scholarships. There will be scholarship either from government, there will be scholarship from professor, or lab will have a project that will support you, or that particular institute or university will have money to support you. So you can apply to any graduate school, but as first point mentioned here, it's a full-time job. You have to give at least 3 or 4 hours every day. You have to read profiles of any particular researcher. You have to read their latest publications and then write an email. Only then you can write actually a relevant email. And when you are writing an email with your CV, you should always write a covering letter. Mostly professors, they don't read actually CVs at the first point. They will go to a covering letter. Cover letter is short format of your CV. They look at your cover letter. Always don't forget to attach that cover letter. They read it and then they make a decision. And they make a decision, as Mohsin Bhai already suggested. They read your email. So your email decides how good you are. So be true in that. So it's a full-time job. You read everything about that lab. You read everything about that researcher. You read their latest research, what they have been doing, and then decide. Then finding the right program, laboratory, research focus, and supervisor. Here comes actually a thing. You should never actually look at the rankings of universities. Always look at output of the lab. Look at what that lab is publishing. If they're publishing really good research, and where the alumni of that lab are at the moment. If they are successful people, if they're really good in research or in industry, choose that particular lab. Don't look at university ranking. We have seen Nobel Prizes being received by people who are, I mean, those universities are not even in 300 ranking. So don't go after rankings of universities. Go after lab, what is happening in that lab, and if that interests you, then approach. And whenever you are approaching a program or any particular lab, you look at lab, you look at people in the lab, then you email head of the lab, not everyone in that lab. He is the person who will actually decide whether they are going to take you in or not. And in each in department, when you are applying, just email only professors who are relevant to you. Don't be desperate to email everyone. because then you will actually be discouraged. You will feel that you have emailed so many professors, but you're not getting any positive response. It's good that you choose a particular professor, read about that professor, read about his research, and then email. And there are higher chances that the particular professor will reply you positively, and maybe he will be impressed and he will hire you. I think Qambar will add a little bit more to that.
Yep. Thank you, Bilal. Yeah, those are really, really nice points. And yeah, I think someone was saying that my mic was pretty close. Is it all right now? You guys
Yeah,
can
I
hear me
think it's
clearly?
fine now.
All right. Yeah, I think it was pretty close. Mohsin bhai, you were saying something. Were you? I interrupted. All right. So yeah, Bilal have mentioned those points. So I'll just keep continue with.
So right. So those are excellent points to add to the. Yeah, there were a few things I wanted to add, like how you draft this email or the cover letter. So as Bilal already described the process, like you read the research interest and then maybe read one or two impactful paper they may have published, and based upon that you fine tune your email or your cover letter such that you actually weave in your research interest with the research interest of a particular lab. And it is really important that you spend quite a bit of time like writing each email, right? Because each email is specific to a particular person, so don't do copy pasting from one person to another, and that is very important between specific to a particular department. Let's say you reach out to 4 people and you have this copy paste email sent to all 4. Sometimes what happens is these people actually forward emails to each other, such that let's say I reached out to a particular professor for a job or for a graduate program, and he didn't have a space, for example, but he knew the other professor may have, and he may forward that email to other person, and that person may say, oh, he copy pasted the same thing to me as well. Thing of that nature. So what happens is it gives an impression you are fishing around, so which is not good. And also when you send any email, make sure you work with your mentor, right? Anyone in SSGSA team, we are happy to look at your cover letter and things of that nature, because we can provide some feedback. And before sending any email out, make sure you do some kind of like trial email, such that you send it to yourself first and see how it looks. Sometimes like minor formatting errors can make the email not as impressive. If you are unable to read it properly, there are mistakes, typos, species, things of that nature. So that these are some of the things. But before you even start reaching out to the professor, make sure you already have invested quite a bit of time in terms of doing your research, the program, the labs, the things of that nature. Back to you, Qambar.
Yeah, thank you, Mohsin.
Yes, I would like to add one point actually here. When they are reading publications, latest publications of any researcher, and I would actually talk about this point later. So what they should do is they should actually read discussion of that paper carefully. They should either read a review. So why I'm saying they should read discussion carefully, they will understand paper and then they should read discussion, because it will give them an idea what this researcher is going to do in future, because in the discussion they have to mention where they could take this particular research. So in the discussion they will highlight limitations of that research, of that particular publication. So from there you can get an idea about future research. If that particular professor asks you, what would you do in future? What interested you in my research? And what would you do? You take it from there. Why I said this is, if you apply in Europe, after the initial screening, in second step they do is
and Bilal. I request Salman to please mute others if possible. Thank you.
Yeah, Mohsin bhai, I just muted everyone, and I'll unmute Bilal bhai. And sorry, Bilal bhai, for the interruption.
Oh, unmuted. Now, can you hear me now?
Yes, Bilal bhai, please go.
Okay. So why I was mentioning that is in Europe, in the second step of selection process, they will send you their latest publication, and they will ask you to prepare it for the interview. And in the interview, they will ask you questions. So you have to read that discussion very carefully. That will decide whether they are going to hire you or not. So that was one point. I think over to Qambar now. Again.
Thank you, Bilal. Thank you, Mohsin bhai. Yeah, those were really nice point. And Bilal's points about discussion is like the, yeah, that's like a key thing to get funding. Like students keep asking, how would I get that Marie Curie fellowship? Because those are like highly prestigious scholarship for the Europe and those like other places as well, in like different places of Europe, or for example, IPRS scholarship of Australia, like international postgraduate research. They were very competitive scholarship, and I think that's the key point which Bilal mentioned, that if you read their discussion, we can talk about that, because that's the do thing. We are discussing about what not to do. So I think we'll go in detail of that. So the points which we discussed, disappointment and not giving enough time, that's important. I think Bilal described it well. So scholarship hunting is full-time job. We're gonna again keep focusing on that. Please give enough time. If you're not giving enough time, like Mohsin bhai explained that well, really well, work with your mentors. All right, try to prepare a list of prospective supervisors. Even you got good GRE, for example, I'm talking about US graduate school applications, then you need to think about your GRE score, like TOEFL score. So GRE score will decide which uni, A plus, A minus, B plus, like in that way. You need to sit with your mentors, think about which university, and then with departments and supervisors. Same for other countries, like different countries have different procedure. For example, talk about Europe, talk about Australia, New Zealand, Canada. Canada also accept GRE. So in these countries, like European countries, Australia, New Zealand, or other Asian countries like Singapore or some way places, they don't want like GRE, but they want good English score like TOEFL or IELTS. But again, you have to write to go through the similar procedure of scholar, like what Bilal mentioned about contacting professors and everything. So giving enough time is very important. It's a full-time job. Bilal mentioned 2-3 hours, 4 hours. Make yourself a diary. I still remember, I still got my diary, sending like 10-15 people like from my research field. It's important. Do not send email to everyone. It's important that whatever your research experience is in your master's, probably not exactly, if you don't want to do your research related to your master's thesis, whatever you are interested, please make yourself a list. That's important. I'm gonna move to the third and most, like little bit of miscommunication and myths. So there is always a myth, and we've been like seeing those in through the CISA and other platform, being like mentor or when we were like mentees, that there are myths like low CGPA. I would like to mention that if I have like a low CGPA, like I can't apply to some universities or some funding. It's kind of myth. You have to basically go through the individual universities profile, and like people stop like researching about those things. So there are criteria of different countries. First class honors, like some countries have CGPA, some countries have first class honors, second class honor, diploma. So they have different kinds of, and then in my experience, universities are pretty lenient, and they know that, especially the North Indian university system, especially doing science or engineering, they know that it's really hard to get a good percentage. So they accept, I think, 60 to 80% as first class honors, which is like which is not a first class honors in here as well. But so they are very pretty like relaxed with those kind of rules. So make sure that do not discourage yourself that I have like average CGPA or I have low CGPA, I cannot. You can apply. What you could do, for example, I'm just talking about very low CGPA. For example, if someone got very low CGPA in masters, what you could do is you could do another masters, all right, with full funding in from Europe. There are heaps of European universities. I'll come to the selection of that, like not selecting some, going to the some universities. I'm going to come to the, like that will be the last point for this slide. So you can do your masters from Asian countries. China has lots of scholarship. South Korea have really good university. China and all Asian countries have where you can get fully funded master. Few European countries have funded master. So this will give you really, if this is just an advice, like I'm not saying everyone should do that. For example, if someone is like from that profile, they can think about these as option if then they think that. But don't discourage yourself that you would never get a funding for your PhD or for your research because you have a very low CGPA. I've seen so many people done really well doing PhD from top 10 institute of the world because they have taken this kind of bypass, like did second masters from Europe or South Korea and then went to Harvard or Cambridge or I don't know, so many institutions. I've got friends who have done those kind of bypass. So this is a kind of myth. So please work with your mentor. If you have any confusion related to that, feel free to send us email through CISA or any other platform. Second most important
To
thing, if I
Qambar's point, Qambar, I will add a point
yeah
here.
sure sure
So sometime like not sometime, all the time graduate committees look at it's called totality of the evidence. So what we mean by totality of the evidence is like, let's say for some reason you have low score in a particular subject, right? Or a class that maybe you got a B or B minus for some reason, right? You're supposed to get A plus. But you can describe that and address this issue in your statement. And if you have additional things that can complement it, for example, let's say you were doing an advanced biochemistry class and you got a low score, but you have a really nice publication or presentation in that particular area, or you did projects, so you can complement it. You can address, like, describe what was the reason you may have the low GPA for a particular reason, or you scored low, but you complemented it with something else, right? So when someone will look from totality of the evidence, you have addressed the criteria. And this actually works really well when you also have excellent scores, let's say GRE and TOEFL. So then you don't have to do like, additional studies such as masters before you do PhD. And I have like I mentored a student whose GPA was very close to 3, a little bit lesser than 3, and he got into Hopkins, which is a top-notch university. And the reason was because he complemented it with one of a publication in PNS, which is a leading journal. So yeah, work with your mentors. And it is also really important to not leave the India or Aligarh just because you want to go overseas, because I've seen over the time students going to the universities or the countries which are not recognized for the research, and then that's like a career kill, right? It's AMU may be much better, or other institutions in India, or one just wanted to leave and go to a place which may not have a good reputation or the research. So yeah, work with your mentors closely, and then inshallah things will work. When selecting the universities, over the time I have seen, particularly people from the AMU, you ask them which university they will be applying to, and the 3 names they will just send. Well, Harvard University, Stanford University, MIT. Well, it's good to be thinking about big universities, but it's also good to be realistic. And that's when we say select broadly. You could choose top-notch institutions, and you can also complement it with the universities that are at the medium tier, or some backup universities where you can lean back in case if top-notch university didn't offer you a place. But we have scholars from our SSGSA who went to Stanford. Yes, we have Ruchi Dana who did MBA from there. She got accepted in Harvard and many places. Folks have been there. But when we were mentoring them, we use this approach where you do application to broad universities, top-notch, mid-tier, and backup. Thank you, Qambar.
Yep, no problem. Thank you, Mohsin bhai. Yeah, I'm just gonna like wrap up these points. I think we need 15-20 minutes for discussion and question. I can see that there are multiple questions. So just wrapping up to this like discussion, and then probably Bilal can add few points about these myths. So CGPA and Mohsin bhai have really explained well what you could do. We have given you some options, like think about doing second masters, or think about doing a research from somewhere and get a publication, or as a co-author. Even if you don't get like a first author paper, you could get second or third author as a co-author paper. That can complement. Mohsin bhai have suggested a really nice way, and that worked well for, I think, that worked well for me. I kept applying for these Australian scholarship a lot. After doing my master, I think Bilal and I were in similar position because we know from each other from Aligarh. From our +2, Bilal moved to Jamia. I stayed in AMU, did my bachelor's and master's. He kept applying, did not have like I had a master's thesis, Bilal had same thing, but did not have much research experience, like few like 1 year of master's thesis. And then what we did, we worked through these things. We worked as a like a research assistant and published some paper and got into the scholarship, which we were not getting at first place after completing our master's. All right. So these kinds of myths. And second thing, second and like third point is just we just discussed. You require like very peer-reviewed publication to get into grade school or like top-notch university. It's not true always. You do require, if you do have, that will give you some like a really like a really good chance to get into. But sometimes it's not. You can get some, you should have some publication or some research experience, but that's not a mandatory or compulsory thing for all universities. So there are requirements. You can always complement with your research experience, with your master's thesis. And what you could do as a research, you could take some research experience, like what I said, like work as a research assistant somewhere in the lab, do some co-author papers, work on some research project and try to publish paper as a co-author. You don't need to have like first author paper. If you do have, that's will give you opportunity to get into like really with good funding, but that's not always a mandatory thing. These kind of myths are there. Second, like third or more, like the little bit like people sometimes think that they need to have like certain amount in their account to get into foreign country. That's also a myth. All right, that's not true always. All right, they might ask you for some kind of bank statement for visa purpose, but not for the funding purposes. So that's also kind of myth. Only rich people can go overseas. That's not true. Otherwise, like there are like lots of CISA stories you have heard about, CISA or non-CISA story. We are all sitting here with lots of scholarships.
Qambar,
So
SSGSA.
yeah, sorry.
Yes, a few years
SSGSA,
ago
new name.
It used to be CISA when we got it, SSGSA. Yeah,
yeah. So because
yeah.
the focus was science at the time. Yeah, so that is
Mm.
really true. You don't have to, like, the only thing you need, I mean, there is a saying someone said long time ago. I think it may be Ali Bhai, Syed Rizvi, who is one of the founders for SSD. I think like through education you can go any place, you know. So which is really true to Qambar's point. If you just motivated and you work hard, the doors for opportunities will open up. So perhaps what we could do is move on to the next discussion items, like briefly. I saw one question came through, like how universities convert percentage to the GPA. So the way it works is many universities either have a working relationship with the institutions that convert percentage into GPA, and also certify the degrees. And one of them is called World Education Services, WES. And if you want, you could actually put your grades there, and then they can convert your percentage into GPA. That's like unofficial. You can get a sort of like ballpark number. But if you want official conversion, they have services, you pay the fee and they convert it. But for most universities, it is not required until and unless they specifically mention it. They do have systems to convert those.
I would like to add actually to the presentation point where we were talking about low CGPA and rich people and everything. I mean, I can exemplify those points. I have never touched 70% in my entire life. Only in 10th class, my percentage has been 70 or something. And in all other degrees, my percentage is in, early 60s. But I'm here. I got Australian government scholarship and IPRS, International Postgraduate Research Scholarship through Deakin University. And Qambar is on the same scholarship. So percentage never matters. What you should actually think about, I would like to add that like someone who has less marks in masters, you always have that option of doing a thesis or project. Don't do it for the sake of formality. Do it with interest and try to publish it. Seriously, you spend 6 or 7 months or sometimes 1 year. Try to do it really nicely and try to publish it. get most of it, because they, whenever someone is actually looking at your public application, publication certifies your skills. That's why they think that publication is mandatory sometimes. But if you have done research experience only, and then you get recommendation from that particular supervisor, that also certifies that you have those set of skills. Every supervisor, every lab looks for people with skills. Publications are not mandatory. If you have skills that the particular lab requires, you will be hired. So try to actually increase your skill level. Don't worry about percentage. And about money, actually, my only reason to move to New Delhi was to support myself. So I was working in a call center as well. Otherwise, I would have completed my bachelor's and master's in Aligarh. So don't do that. Stay in Aligarh. Enjoy your studies. We would move to next one.
Bilal, your point, like, so the lesson here is, although, like, you may have one specific thing, let's say one metrics where the score may be a little bit lower, but I think Bilal's point, like, he did other things that actually complemented the application. So, working towards the totality of the evidence that you are hard worker, you are intelligent, and you actually organize things, and which shows in doing projects and if possible, publishing. So there was a question like, what about someone who doesn't have a lot of research experience or publication? So at least like get some research experience. If you have done some program, particularly BSc or MSc, I'm sure you may have some lab work, right? Although you may not have experience for a particular project. So then complementing with the other things like, excellent GRE TOEFL score. So it's, as I said, again, totality of the evidence. If you could describe it in the statement of purpose, all these things in totality, that will work. One really important thing I would like to mention here is don't cut corners. What I mean by cut corners, I have seen over the time, like folks choose the universities or the places or the countries where they want to go because they don't want to write, for example, IELTS or TOEFL or GRE exams, right? That's why they apply to those places. Just remember, the places where they have not as many requirements, such as the standardized tests, everyone can apply. And there may be one position and 200 people applying, right? So much more competition. Versus like where are many more minimum criteria, then you may have to fulfill more criteria, but the number of applicants may be not as many, because this process whittles down the applicants from people who would address those attributes versus people who will cut corners and not do it. So try to do it. It's actually going to help you a lot. Like Bilal and Qambar can tell you, like if you write GRE, TOEFL, or IELTS, these exams help you prepare in terms of gaining the skills of writing or speaking or discussion. And these all things actually do matter when you do graduate studies. So it looks like through this slide, we did discuss a lot of stuff which we were planning on doing in the next slide, but nonetheless, back to Bilal and Qambar.
Yeah, I would just like to add, like it's related to previous one, but it's just like a general thing. Like I think Mohsin Bhai mentioned about that a little bit. So that's the point, is don't panic in selecting PhD supervisor. I think Bilal gave example of Nobel laureate and those things. So it's important that you work with your mentor and discuss that. It's really, really important. Don't panic. Don't go to every university because it's in a foreign country. All right, we have seen so many people struggling. All right, so it's important that you discuss, you look at the research profile, what is the outcome, like Bilal mentioned about what is the outcome they are giving in terms of publication, where their alumni are. Sometimes the ranking of the university, we have noticed that in especially last 1 or 2 years, people are moving for their some for PhD, most of them are for masters, whose ranking are even lower than like a normal, I'm not comparing with AMU or Jamia, like their normal private universities of India. So do not just go everywhere because you think that is in a foreign country. You can discuss with your mentor, you can discuss with your seniors, whatever you want to write to SSGSA mentor, you can always write to us. or anyone, please. So it's important that do not get panicked that, oh, I got selected, I should go there. No, you have to think about, if you are applying, the most important thing that before you apply, you could check those things. But if you're not sure about where you got selected, whether this program or this professor, because especially for this important, this point is like applicable for everyone, but it is most important point especially for PhDs, because PhD is like a full-time commitment for 4 or 5 years at least, and some of the cases it may take in US 6 or 7 years, especially in biological science, where me, Bilal, or like, yeah, the Mohsin Bhai is also from a pharmaceutical science. Sometimes it takes 6 or 7 years. It's a full-time commitment for how many years, and you don't want to leave those places like after 2 or 3 years because you selected the wrong lab. So take your time, discuss with your mentors, discuss with your seniors about that. That is what the last point. So do not to be like decide things too early. So think about your research into whether you are actually interested in that field, whether you can devote your 5 or 6 years into that field. You are only going because you got some funding in that, or you got only that scholarship. You can always like get a second scholarship, you can always try some other school. Sometimes the research interest is not of your like the field which you got into, or like the scholarship which you got into that lab, that might not be like the interested field, which you never even like learned that in your masters or undergraduate. You never like that research field or that subject, and you want to do your research. So please don't do in that way. So always work, like always do your homework, discuss about, and stipend situation is also very important. We have seen, we have got so many emails, people have been to places where stipend is not that enough. So think about stipend as well. So people are emailing us, oh, it's a mouth to neck situation, and we have admitted into PhD program where the stipend scholarship is not enough. So that's the thing, you don't want to get into that position. So please do that thing like as a homework before applying for that scholarship, before applying for that funding, because it's at the end of the day, if you are leaving that program, it's also not going to be very good. If Bilal want to add something to that,
Yeah, a
I'm
couple
happy
of
to.
points actually. One thing is, as Qambar mentioned about choosing a supervisor, we actually make a joke that we say it's really harder than choosing a partner. So you should be very careful when you are choosing a supervisor, because you have to spend a lot of time with him or her. So be very, very careful. Choose someone who is a good human, good scientist. So that
Right.
person needs to be good human as well. You need to
So
be treated
Bilal,
well.
there is a joke at our side. We have seen like a lot of folks from India. They tend to choose labs, or the folks who are the supervisor maybe from India. And someone
Yeah,
long time ago, when I was searching the professors, Dr. Saf Sheikh, who is another co-founder of SSGSA, he said this to me, and this statement is stuck with me. Like he was saying, well, you coming out of the India and you searching for Mumbai
India.
in the US, and this is not good. And which is
Yeah,
so true. Try to and usually like you will see a lot of problems in labs that are run by, unfortunately, for folks who come as an immigrant, or have Indian background or Chinese. Try to find labs which are big, and PI is well known, and perhaps the native of that country. Usually those people do really, really well. And Bilal, I will go back to your point again where you said publications, right? At the end of the day, the only thing that matters is your advisor and the lab you are going into. And when you
yeah,
look at the research output, which is measured in number of publications and the funding support a person may have, if that lab is publishing quickly, right? Like let's say bunch of papers each year, is very likely you will also publish quickly. And if you're going to a lab which doesn't publish like in few years, you will also be the same. Yeah, it's really hard to be an outlier in that situation. So to emphasize Bilal's point again, make sure that you look at the research output as well. Go to the lab, which are have funding and publishing, because the research is all about like publications.
yeah. So the other thing is actually the second point, that don't while communicating to potential supervisors. So, for example, you get email from any supervisor and he's asking you something. Don't rush in responding. Take your time, understand what that person is asking you, and then write a perfect email. Read it a couple of times and see whether you can actually understand it, whether it sounds good to you, and then respond. And always when you are having interview, don't forget to actually write email just after the interview, thanking. You have to thank, you have to appreciate for their time. This leaves a positive impact on the person. So in responding to supervisors, you can get your email actually verified by seniors. You can send that response to your senior, and that senior can actually look at the email and get it verified. Someone asked about research proposal. So I would just add one point about that. So we call hinge sentences. Something is called hinge sentences, where you hook a person. Each sentence should be like a hook. One sentence should be hooked for another one. You should actually compel reader to read. When you're writing a research proposal, you have read research of that particular professor. You know what research you are actually applying to. When you're writing a research statement of purpose or research proposal, you write about you. You write your skills that are relevant to that particular position. You initially actually introduce yourself and your skills. Then you write about the position, what that position requires in the second para. In the third para, you can actually highlight that how you fit best in that scenario. And you can actually conclude your proposal by that. I think I can even share my cover letter, which may be helpful to a lot of people. So if anyone needs, they can actually contact me. I can leave my email ID. I can email you, everyone, whoever needs that. That may be helpful. I can actually leave my proposal that I used while applying to IPRS, and I can give you my current letter. So I will tell you one example from my side, what I didn't do. There were so many positions that I could have applied. Out of so many positions, I chose only 3. One was in Stanford, one was in Washington University, and another in Lund University in Sweden. All the 3 professors are of my area. I applied to 3 different positions and all 3 accepted. You don't have to apply to every position. That's what I'm actually highlighting again. Just read the description of the job and then see whether you have those skills or not, and then highlight them. And one more thing, when you're applying, for example, somebody is applying to mathematics or business studies. If you have got good marks in business studies, but not overall your percentage is less, don't forget to highlight that thing in your email or in your CV. Just highlight, you got 98 out of 100 in mathematics. That leaves positive impression on the recruiter or professor or supervisor. I think that includes everything, and we are over the time now.
So Bilal, quickly, Qambar, there is a question like the question is someone looking at a researcher and the researcher is old, and if they choose the person for the PhD. Yeah, that's a good question. So the question is, someone someone found a researcher with whom she would like to work, but looks like the research is really, really old, and something happens during the PhD, like how to deal with it. So I will take it from a different point of view. Whenever you choose a lab or research or the researcher, make sure you go to an university where there may be more than one person who may be doing similar kind of research, right? So let's say you may have a research project which is very specific, but there is another professor who has a research interest, maybe aligning to it or similar or in similar subject area, for example. And this actually helps you from many points. One, that person or that lab may help you with your project, serving on your committees, or if something happened to a particular lab that you are in, you can always like work with that person and move into that lab. So yeah, so yeah, make sure you don't go to a place where there's only one person doing a very specific research and something happens, and then you don't have many options. We knew someone at University of Chicago, and the lady was working in organic chemistry, and the professor actually unfortunately died in middle of their PhD, and the project was so specific that the person was unable to transfer to the another lab, so that person has to start the thesis again. Although that thesis, the committee was a little bit relaxed in terms of letting her graduate, but that actually brought her a lot of trauma. So yeah, so it's really important to go a place, and at the end of the day, the only thing matters is the lab, right? Like the lab, you're going to university ranking in PhD or a very research oriented masters, it doesn't matter. Like you could go to Harvard in a lab that is mediocre, the professor is not established, and in terms of in field, you could get a degree, but yeah, but you get degree from there versus like I know a professor, he's in a very small university, and the lab is like Harvard Hughes medical investigator lab, which is like very few people who have HHMI in the US, right? And folks who graduate from his lab, although the university is small, they actually are faculty in Harvard, Stanford, and other places. So it's all about like the lab you joining, the research input, output in terms of the publication, the funding support they have, as Bilal and Qambar already discussed. So it looks like we already discussed quite a bit around these things, but as other panelists, Bilal and Qambar already mentioned, we'll send our contact credentials. If you have specific questions, we are happy to address those, help you. But again, like try to reach out to the people who could serve your mentors and help you in this process. Don't be alone. Don't do it alone, because there are so many helpful people who could provide you a lot of inputs and supports and help you in your graduate applications. So with this, I will let Salman take over and conclude this webinar. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Okay, thank you all. And I'll just, I think if within 5 minutes, I'll just take the questions which were sort of unanswered, and we'll call it a close after that. So there was a question from Israr. What is the main idea of getting selected for graduate program? I think, Mohsin bhai, if very quickly you can take this question.
The question was like the criteria for, can you please repeat it? Sorry, I missed these first part.
Yeah, the question is, what is the main idea of getting, I think he is just asking for that X factor, probably.
What is the main criteria of getting selected in graduate studies or selecting the graduate programs?
Yeah, he said, what is the main idea of getting selected for a graduate program?
Okay, so briefly, selecting graduate program, as I said, like you have to show the totality of evidence. So meaning like, what research interest you have, the scores you may have in terms of the GPAs, GRE, and TOEFL. Based upon that, you select university. So that actually addresses the first part. The second part is like applying to these schools. If you could address this totality of the evidence and show it to the graduate program that you will be a great fit for the university or the lab you're going to, of course you will get selected. So it's actually multiple factors, right? I will talk from the Canadian and US perspective first. So really nice GPA, good GRE, TOEFL scores, nice statement of purpose, which is fine-tuned to the program, great support letters. And when writing the statement of purpose, I think we forgot to mention one point from folks from the India or our area. Usually we talk a lot about the adversity, right? So you read one statement of purpose, any person who is applying from our area, we know how they will write a statement. Please try not to do that. And try to have it very fine-tuned and specific to your experience, right? And graduate student programs are not looking for people who were just didn't have food and is struggling to go to the school, that didn't have electricity. Of course, these things are important, you can emphasize that, but they're looking for people who fit in the program and their experience is unique to you, not like, just like copy pasted based upon other person's statement.
Okay, and so thank you, Mohsin bhai. And this is the final question that we are going to take for this session. And I'll ask Qambar bhai to take it, and I'll combine the question. Mariam has asked that. The first part, Qambar bhai, is that consider the other situation, like it was discussed that if you are not good at academics, you can always back it up with research experience. How is the other way around? If we don't have a research experience, will it be a shortcoming? And the next question is, if you go to a website, every professor would talk good about his or her research. How to differentiate what can be good and what cannot be?
So just I think we try to discuss, me and Bilal, in detail about the first question, but just summarize that again, that if you don't have a good research profile or don't have a background, I think Mohsin bhai also mentioned that you can always do some take some do some complementary thing, like do some research work, like after your master's or after your bachelor's, work in certain lab, work as a research assistant. I think there are illegal, you can go to any department, like you can talk to any professor and they can take you as a research assistant. You go to IITs or wherever, you can apply for research assistantship. Try to publish. Bilal mentioned about the publishing your thesis. It's important because in foreign everyone try to do that. In India it's not very common, except like few IITs or some good engineering institutes. So try to publish your master's work. Try to talk with your supervisor that you're gonna apply for the master's or PhD positions overseas. So try to publish that work as well. You always can. And the second option, which we always recommend everyone, if you do think that you will not have like any drawbacks if you can do second master, because that's what we recommend people do: a second masters from funded universities, funded schools, from Asian countries or European country, if you can. Like, I'm not suggesting everyone should do that, but if you think that you have better chances to get into Harvard, Stanford, Massachusetts, Oxford. And we have so many stories through SSGSA. All right, we have seen people from let me just quickly say that in chemistry department, I'm not sure about now, but when we were doing, I was from biochem, they did not have a thesis. And my friend did this bypass, and he's a SSGSA scholar at the same time when I got in 2011, and he did his PhD at the end of day from Imperial College London. Can you imagine a person who did not have a master's thesis did his PhD from Imperial College London? He was a last panelist in one of our discussion. So you can always have options to do that, and you can always improve your research profile. About the last question, what was that, Salman?
Okay, it was like every professor will talk good about their research. How to?
Yeah, I think I will ask Bilal to add about that because he's much experienced.
Bilal, like, let me add one
Yeah.
more point here.
Sure, Mohsin bhai.
So okay, so so as Salman said in the beginning, I did my program from chemistry. We didn't have thesis, and I came to graduate program here, and didn't needed another master's program. So the way I did was, like, I was volunteering with the professors in the Aligarh, which is unusual, right? Like, not many people do, while I was doing my master. So I was a volunteer researcher, like just talking to them, because it's as Bilal said, many programs may not have thesis or research, so it's pretty unusual for a bachelor's or master's student going to the labs and talking to the people or working with them. So you could actually do that. You don't need to do another program. You could directly go to the PhD program. So many students, like, we have mentored, they got into top-notch PhD program without the need even of a master, just like bachelor's 4 years or BSc MSc 3+2 situation. So things of that nature. Like, the key is to work with your mentors and reach out to the SSGSA team. Like, we, based upon your profile over the years, like, over a decade, we have been mentoring students. We should be able to help you decide like what would work best in your situation. But yeah, talk to multiple people when you're getting the advice, like, and hopefully that will work. Back to you, Bilal.
Bilal, you are muted. Please unmute.
Bilal, you mute him. Yep.
So I think that's a valid question. Like we say, no milkman will tell actually their yogurt is sour. It's a Kashmiri thing, we say that. So every professor will say their research is really wonderful and beautiful. You are the person who has to actually check. That's your job. You have to, as we already mentioned, you look at their funding, what kind of funding that lab is supported with. You look at not only number of publications, but the quality of publication. What quality of publication is that particular group having? And as I already said, you look at alumni as well. Sometimes what you can do is you can even actually email a PhD student of that lab. They can tell you better. You can ask them that I'm planning to apply to this lab. I just wanted to know what's the research environment in that lab. How cooperative is that supervisor? How nice is he or she with students? That's one point. That's what you can do. If you're still confused, seniors are there. You can send, for example, if you are confused between 2 or 3, you share that with seniors and they can use their expertise to guide you to choose the best option. I think that's the way to go. You don't spend that much time on there.
Thank you so much, Bilal bhai. And now I will move to the real final segment. And thank you for all who have stayed with us for so long. We have senior members of the SSGSA Executive Committee also in the audience. And I would request them to say the closing remarks. So we have Syed bhai and Ali Rizvi bhai both here. So first Syed bhai would go and then Ali Rizvi bhai. If very quickly you can give the closing remarks for the session.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. I know we are all on different time zones, so good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, or good night, like, in whatever time zone you are. An excellent presentation from Bilal, Qambar, and of course, Mohsin. And I just want to add here, I know that the topic for today was what not to do, but we all learned so much what to do as well. So excellent. I think that is also very important. And I just want to, touch upon the US side, because I know we learned a lot, like, how to get admission and the professors you need to focus on and how to make sure that, you get into their lab. As many of you know that the system in the US is like, you have to take the GRE and TOEFL, and of course, like, there are some other things. You have to have a good statement of purpose and good recommendation letter. But the key here is that you have to get a good GRE score in order to get admission, because what will happen, no matter how great research you have done, because many times when your application comes to the admission office, they look at the minimum GRE score that will qualify you. If you do not have a minimum GRE score or a GRE score where they have the cutoff, they may just throw away your application. So it doesn't matter that, how much, what you have done. You have to, the students who are interested to apply here in the United States in a reasonably good universities, they must spend a lot of time in preparing for the GRE. If you have a good GRE score, because that is a standardized test, like, what Mohsin was mentioning, that's how they compare, because your GPA in your university could be so good, and in other universities, the student may not have a good GPA, but he may still be a better student than the other who had a better GPA. So it's really important for the students who are looking into applying in the US. They should, like, put lot of efforts in getting a good GRE score. And of course, the other thing which comes in terms of, looking for professors. I know Bilal and Qambar, you have mentioned about it, but in many universities here, once you come here and get admitted, then you do a rotation with different professors. For 6 months, you will be with one, and maybe, up to 3 rotation you can do, and then you can select. Because many times it happens that you may be looking for a Nobel laureate, but guess what? In that Nobel laureate's lab, life could be hell. And sometimes, I mean, these Nobel laureates, when they get the Nobel Prize, they are not very helpful to the students. They want to get best out of you, जिससे कहते हैं ना, मतलब उर्दू या हिंदी में कि they really, like, I mean, get your blood, and I mean, they will, like, best out of it. Because the perfect example, when I first came to Purdue University, there was a professor in the chemistry, which many of you know. I mean, his name was Herbert Brown, and he did research on the boration and all that. And some person was like, I mean, in his lab, he said that, oh, I made the biggest mistake in my life, that I came to the Nobel Prize winners lab. So like Bilal mentioned, that it is good idea, if you are looking to a particular professor, it's good to really ask someone, what is what's the environment, I mean, what are the chances, is this professor is helping you down the road? And then, of course, there was an emphasis on on the professor's research lab. But when you are doing a PhD or a master's, sometimes university also does matter, because down the road, when you applied other places, when your application is from Harvard or Stanford or Imperial College or Cambridge, Oxford, it does have a value. So do not disregard to that. I mean, if you do see, because you're coming as not as a postdoctoral researcher, that I mean, you're just with that lab. You are like, I mean, your name, you will get a degree from from whichever, like, for example, IIT. I mean, yeah, in the IIT you can go to a research professor's lab and do, but the name branding is always there. So I'm sorry, I mean, I took a lot of time, but I want to thank the panelists, and also, like, I mean, bearing with me few things that I mentioned. So back to you, Salman.
Uh,
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Syed bhai. That was indeed useful. And I think Ali Rizvi bhai has probably left the call, but he asked me to read out a message from him. And it is very important, and it is very relevant to this call too. So whenever you send an email to a professor, please make sure that you have a professional email address. So like your names are proper. Like the Ali bhai used, it should not be like karatemusic@gmail.com. Okay. And it was an issue here also. Like some of the names were not clear, and even I was worried whether it's like a human or a bot. So use human names and write proper names when you send an email.
Right. Salman, I have a funny story. So the lab I was working with, we got an email from someone who had excellent research profile, but the email address was fatboy1982@gmail.com. And so this was a joke around the lab, like, so it's really important to email people from your professional email address.
All right. With that, I would like close the event, and thank you all so much for attending. And a recording of this event will be made available on our YouTube channel. And please keep following SSGSA Facebook page and the website for more information about such events. We will be holding more webinars in the future, and also encourage other people to join these webinars if you, of course, you find it useful. And thank you so much. And I'll probably close the meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Thank you. Thank you very much.